you doing?
It's nice to meet you. I'm David.
Nick.
Jess.
Hello.
You are.
Jack. Hello. So, what happened here?
Trolls.
What's your problem? Don't you start with me! Don't you start with me!
We seem to be living in an age of anger. But how much of it is due to a radical shift in the way we now communicate, from in-person to online? There's no doubt that social media has been instrumental in bringing about real-world change. But at the same time, the way the platforms operate seems to be fueling a divisive culture of outrage, hatred, and anger.
It is about Facebook choosing to grow at all costs by buying its profits with our safety.
My name's David Baddiel, and I want to find out if something originally designed to help us talk to each other is just leading to everyone shouting at each other.
How bad is it?
Maybe apocalyptic.
I'll be meeting victims of online anger.
If you can get away with saying, I'm going to kill you, on a comment, how many times can you put that until someone believes, maybe I can kill them?
As well as talking to prolific users, writers, and experts who both love and hate it, and who, like me, are trying to understand what social media is doing to us.
It's almost like someone's flicked a switch to say, now you be human in a different way. And we're all a bit like, whoa.
I am addicted to social media. I'm addicted mainly to Twitter. You know, it is both a terrible thing and an amazing thing. It is a way of communicating across space and time in a way that humanity have never had before, and occasionally it feels like this is incredible and brilliant. But one thing that I can empirically tell you is the case is that if you're on social media a lot, you will see a lot of conflict, a lot of shouting, a lot of rage, a lot of conviction that one side is right and the other side is wrong. You just see that on social media. You see a very high raising of the temperature of discourse.
Since I first started using social media in 2009, terrifyingly, I've sent over 65,000 tweets.
Why do you use social media?
There's a very straightforward reason. You sell tickets, you sell books, you sell television programs in terms of who might watch them on social media, and it's a bigger platform now probably than any other for doing that. I mean, if I do a series of jokes on social media and those jokes go well, I attract followers, so those followers are there for when I say, oh, and please watch this television program. So it's a kind of audience that you're building up that is a captive audience, and that is definitely part of the reason why I'm on social media. Another one is a psychological one to do with needing an audience. Like, I might think of something funny at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There isn't an outlet for that, so I can put it on Twitter and you get likes, and so that's like getting a laugh.
I've come to meet Matthew Williams, who runs Hate Lab, which was set up in 2017 to monitor and analyse online abuse.
I'm going to be showing you some screens of
people hating me?
People, well...
And people just talking about me.
To some extent, yeah. But it's going to be...
I get a lot of lovely messages sent to me on social media, but also some very unlovely ones. And Matthew has agreed to take a deep dive into some of that stuff.
So this is our Hate Lab dashboard. So what it essentially does is collect data from different sources, mainly Twitter, maybe 4chan, also Telegram and other sources, and monitors hate speech across various characteristics.
But I think you've got examples, haven't you, of stuff linked to my actual Twitter account. Can I see that?
Should we go there? Okay, this is interesting. Yeah.
Wow. Please help, fuck, herd immunity.
Yeah. So this is a word cloud which basically collates together the most used terms, phrases in some of the most toxic tweets in your timeline.
There's a lot about Jews, racial abuse, kind of a weird nightmare.
This may look disturbing, but my question is it just talk or something more dangerous?
So it's my contention that the rage and anger that you see on, and hate that you see on social media is not staying on social media, that you see it sort of bleeding out into what people call the real world more and more. Have you got any sense of that?
We've done some research at Cardiff University. We took London as the example, and we're able to then measure the amount of hatred on Twitter in each area, and then measure the amount of hate crime on the streets. And we found that consistently throughout those areas, there was a pattern that emerged. And ultimately, around about a week after a peak in hatred on social media, we saw an increase in hate on the streets. So this gives us some indication that there's a potential relationship between the two.
Back home, I came across a news story that seemed to vividly illustrate what Matthew had told me.
Good morning, beautiful people. Whatever the weather, wherever you're from, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Stay safe, guys, and have fun today.
So I'm watching some videos on the video sharing platform TikTok of a man called Smithy, who used to be a builder, but then started putting some videos on TikTok of himself and his family just kind of mucking about. And they became incredibly successful, and he got a really large following, and then he gave up being a builder and basically became a full-time TikToker.
What is going on?
The more people who click on the Smithy family videos, the more advertising they attract across all platforms, which means more money for the family.
And it was all going really well. And then I read that something really bad had happened to Smithy. So normally when you were doing lots of filming for your TikTok, it was all based here.
Everything started in it.
Does that make it worse in a way that you've got all these memories on video?
I don't like looking at him.
You don't look at
No.
it? Okay, why not? Just because it's too much? Yeah.
It's our life, and we put it out there for people to see. And there's no rule book, there's no handbook to tell you what to expect and how to handle it.
That's true. But before this happened, presumably you saw comments or whatever that might have led you to think, oh, there are some people who don't like what we're doing.
Of course, but I mean, from the beginning, I think people either like us or they don't like us.
So whose room is this?
Amelia's and Isabella's.
Okay. Wow. What have you said to them?
The girls?
Yeah.
The main question they ask is, why can't we come home?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It's so hard to try and explain stuff like that to kids, isn't it?
Been 20 minutes later, they were asleep in their bed, weren't they? So if we weren't able to get them down, it was, it doesn't, you can't think that's the worst thing you can think about. There's flames coming up at the window, and, Bells is petrified, she can see, and Amelia is still asleep, and she's climbing back into bed, not knowing the dangers of what someone had put us in. Innocent to everything. We had put her in this position. I put my kids in danger. My fault the family were in this position. That's what I feel.
You didn't know. None of us knew. You said something downstairs, there's no handbook. This is a very, very young technology. TikTok, it's been around for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Who knew that putting some funny videos on TikTok might lead to this? How are you supposed to know that? That's why you shouldn't feel bad about it. I think.
If you can get away and constantly get away with saying, I'm going to kill you, on a comment, how many times can you put that until someone believes, maybe I can kill them, maybe I should take this further?
Looking at the comments on TikTok after the attack on Smithy's house, I noticed a lot of the haters seemed to think he somehow deserved it. I see this a lot on social media, people finding ways to claim that their rage is justified. What's clear is the way the online world works is having a much deeper effect than any of us ever predicted. Well, almost any of us.
I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No. No, it's an alien life form.
What do you think, I mean, when you think then about the
Is
future
there life
of it,
on Mars? Yes, it's just landed here.
But it's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about the actual context and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico, it's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about.
20 years since Bowie's prophecy, modern-day social media users are starting to realise just how right he was.
So my theory is the internet is a very new technology and it's still in a childlike phase. It's like very easily distracted by kind of shiny things or, you know, footage of animals. And it gets angry really, really quickly.
Like a kid having a tantrum.
Literally this.
We haven't quite worked out an etiquette and a conduct. And so we should expect it to be chaotic, you know, because it's a very lawless space.
I think there's actually a huge change in the way that humans think and communicate and behave. And it's happened in historical terms like that. It's almost like someone's flicked a switch to say, now you be human in a different way. And we're all a bit like, whoa! And sometimes that's bringing out the worst in us.
It was in California back in the late 70s that the switch to this new form of communication was first flicked.
This is a modem, and with it you can turn your computer into a window on the world.
Before modern social media networks first appeared, exchanging messages was a slightly more niche activity.
They're systems run by individuals at home, offering their own computer so that people can dial into that and pick up information from that computer or leave messages on that computer.
How many of them are there?
There are 100 or so in the UK and thousands in the States. Quite incredible.
Known as bulletin board systems, one such network, Community, perhaps showed us the darker future of online communication. Started by a group of well-meaning academics to share eco-friendly news, it had to be shut down when it was infiltrated by a group of college kids posting racism, misogyny, and fart gags. People we would now call trolls.
Do you behave differently? I mean, do you think you communicate differently with the people you're on because you're at a keyboard instead of in person?
You're typing little letters and they disappear very quickly. And you can be anything you want to be behind those letters. So you're getting all sorts of different types of social behavior now that range through all the psychoses and neuroses of the general populace.
What about
Even back then, it seemed that this new method of communication might be altering the way we talk to each other. But it was something else that really changed the nature of social media networks. Innovations such as friends lists, the like button and the retweet function turned it from being about communication to popularity.
So I remember when MySpace was around, and that was the first time I think you could have some sort of public-facing number system where you had top friends. Whoever was number one, people would take that as, oh, so are you saying that's your best friend and I'm number 5? Because you could have 8. You could have 8 top friends. And I remember that started changing the way people looked at social media.
Everything you tweet or post on social media, you're running an instant opinion poll, whether you like it or not, on how this opinion goes down.
Yeah.
And that can be, yeah, both seductive and dangerous, because you kind of gradually learn out what works and what doesn't work.
I've come to the birthplace of social media to meet Jaron Lanier, who was instrumental in the beginning of the internet, but has since become a renegade, warning of its perils.
He wrote a book quite recently called 10 Reasons Why You Should Delete Your Social Media Account Right Now. And he specifically talks about the way that algorithms within the internet tend to push users towards addiction and extremism and violent speech and all that kind of stuff.
Since their creation, the big social media platforms have primarily made money through advertising. They're a holy grail for advertisers because they use algorithms to track individual buyers' likes and dislikes.
Here's how the algorithms work. The algorithms must get your attention, and then what they do is when they see you engaged, when you're clicking a lot, then they reinforce it. Now the thing is, the human emotions that result in the most measurable behavior changes for engagement are the fight or flight emotions, these very ancient emotional responses. So the whole population has their fight or flight responses activated a little more than they would have otherwise. And the ambient result is an increase in paranoia and irritability. Those are the mildest versions of fight or flight. So you start to have a politics based on paranoia and irritability. And that happened all over the world at once. So if you ask, why is there this sudden wave of these right-wing populists all over the place? Why do we have Bolsonaro and Brazil at the same time? Well, the list, Sweden, Philippines, Turkey, China, and India, all of these countries have histories that could explain their shift, but to have them all move at the same time, like you could say it's demographics, you can say it's income distribution, you can say it's immigration, but what does Sweden and Brazil have in common in any of those things? Not a lot. So the only thing they have in common is Facebook, and it correlates, right? So that's probably the best explanation for the global trend.
I asked at the beginning of this film how much of the rage we are seeing is due to a change in the way we communicate. For Jaron, the constant stimulation of the fight or flight response, a physical reaction to feeling under threat, is what's causing much of the anger and rage. I've come to University College London to scientifically put some of what he told me to the test. Neuroscientist Sophie Scott has devised an experiment to see what is really going on in my brain while I'm engaged on social media.
So here you've got David's left temporal lobe, and for example, you've got some function associated with this. So auditory processing is running along the top there, visual processing is running along the bottom there.
I'm going to be bombarded at close range by a series of tweets about me that I've not seen before. Some nice. Some terrible.
You out?
In the last documentary that I did, I put myself in a room with a Holocaust denier. And a lot of people said, why did you do that? Why were you prepared to do that? Wasn't it horrible? And it was a bit like that, being in that MRI scanner with abuse. There were about 40 minutes in when, the 50th tweet calling me comes up. I started thinking, like, sorry, just remind me why I'm doing this. What exactly am I getting out of this apart from lasting trauma? Here we are, here's my brain. There it is.
Looking good.
Looking colourful. So, show me my results.
Well, this is your brain reading the positive tweets. And quite strikingly, if we look down inside the brain, you're getting activation here. Part of the dopamine-based reward network is being activated when you read the positive tweets. So you are getting a bit of a positive hit from that.
I'm actually, there it is, the pleasure fix
Absolutely.
from someone saying something nice about me.
Absolutely. Would you like to see the opposite contrast? This is your brain when you are looking at the negative versus the positive tweets.
Okay.
And quite strikingly, sitting up here, your brain looks like it's getting ready to move your hands.
I was definitely lying completely still.
But it's just noticeable, like, compared to the positive.
Oh, so you're actually, I was sort of doing this.
Well,
is what
no,
you're
but
saying.
you're trying to stop yourself from moving,
Okay.
would be an interpretation
Yes.
of this.
Well, that's fight or flight, isn't it, then?
Exactly. A lot of these kind of priming responses.
Are motor
activation.
responses.
But yes, it really is in motor areas, and even if the motion doesn't happen,
Right.
you're seeing that preparation very
Right.
strongly here, actually.
But that's really interesting, isn't it? The brain perceives the negative tweet as a threat. You've got a sense of, like, I want to fight. And, of course, you can't. So what you're more likely to do is, you know, refract that anger into something else.
It does leave you with all these sort of roiling emotions that are going to go somewhere. That's either going to be something that you turn inwards on yourself, or you're going to find some way of expressing it back out in the world.
Based on this experiment, it looks like Jaron is depressingly right. Social media on the one hand can provide instant reward, but on the other can actively make you feel threatened and aggressive.
Our witness, Frances Haugen, you speak volumes about how Facebook has put profits ahead of people.
And the worrying thing, according to a former Facebook product manager turned whistleblower, is the world's biggest social media company know this and profit from it.
I saw Facebook repeatedly encounter conflicts between its own profits and our safety. Facebook consistently resolved these conflicts in favor of its own profits. The result has been more division, more harm, more lies, more threats, and more combat. In some cases, this dangerous online talk has led to actual violence that harms and even kills people.
Facebook has, of course, denied these allegations. But it's not just the big platforms that allegedly profit from keeping us angrily triggered. I know from the many documentaries where Putin walks up a long corridor that various nation-states have used social media to spread disinformation and rage in order to destabilize rival countries.
I mean, this is definitely a phenomenon. My sort of journey into this whole thing begins in 2014, and I go to Ukraine. And I realise after a while that I'm looking at two wars here. I'm looking at two conflicts, and there's one on the ground, and it's being fought with guns and troops and tanks. And there's another one online that's being fought with tweets and posts and shares. And ultimately, that second one is more important.
From my point of view, why wouldn't you? It's the cheapest way that you can go and screw up a rival country. You've got all the media there, that's the big influencer, it's a periodically lovely place, there are no gates or bars to it, there are no rules to it, you can go on there anonymously. If you go in there and infect this disproportionately influential place and make it hateful and make people scared and shut people down and make people leave because they're so scared, well, how long did that take you? 6 months, a year?
But what I didn't know was how the success of this mainly communist state-backed hate seems to be inspiring capitalism to do the same.
So today, a number of things are going on Twitter. Justice for Johnny Depp is trending.
Johnny Depp and Amber Heard have been locked in a long-running court battle, both accusing each other of physical abuse.
This interests me because I read somewhere in the news that Johnny Depp's lawyers had been employing a kind of social media company of some sort to make things trend on Twitter, make positive stuff trend on Twitter and negative stuff for Amber Heard trend on Twitter. I don't know at all if that's true. It raises a question. It seems to now be the case that if people want and have enough money, they can privately create outrage.
To take a look into the online activities targeting her, Amber Heard's lawyers hired Chris Boozy, who specialises in detecting fake accounts, set up to discredit rivals by posting negative messages about them.
Apparently you found specific things in a report on the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing. What did you find?
I can't go into too many details, but we did definitely find coordinated activity with fake accounts. Overall, our assessment was a lot of the activity around the Amber Heard was artificial. It was not the groundswell that it appeared to be. I mean, that was our overall assessment.
Johnny Depp's lawyers say there is no evidence to suggest his team might be responsible for these activities, but Chris believes the practice is extremely widespread.
Talking in general terms here now, if you have one individual, say it be an actor, say it be a high-profile figure, who doesn't like the other person, it's not hard to be able to hire someone to say, hey, look, let's hurt their credibility online, or let's try to hurt their career. At the center of it, it's an individual that is trying to create this fake groundswell of support for something that really isn't there. So when you have a company or a firm that their only goal is to cause chaos, or their only goal is to make this individual look bad or look like a terrible person, I mean, it's not difficult to do.
You can go to a private company now and say, I want this other person trashed, and pay for that.
There are people out there right now, as we're talking, that are getting paid to put messaging out there that may not be what they believe, but they're getting paid to do that. And it's happening more often than I think even journalists understand.
How bad is it, this disinformation, untruth, fake accounts, etc.? Like, you know, how widespread is the problem? I have a sense that it's really bad.
Maybe apocalyptic it would be the best way to
That's a bad word.
Yeah, because that's how bad it is. And it's only getting worse.
He's right that it is more frightening if private companies start to fund people to do it. Because, of course, once lots of people start doing this, then it's going to be very difficult to spot, and it could involve any distortion of any truth.
As of 2021, 4.5 billion people use social media. That's half the world, potentially being manipulated by private and political interests. But I believe there's another, more subtle way social media is making us angry with each other.
So I am of the belief that identity, human identity, is a really complicated thing. But what social media does is it creates an opportunity to simplify your identity into something more noticeable because more easily digestible. So basically you boil down your identity to a badge.
The next step is to get your identity badge recognized by attaching yourself to a tribe or cause.
But then you've got this other thing, which means that everyone is trying to broadcast who they are at the same time. And one way to rise above the throng of everyone else saying who they are is to be the angriest. Literally to turn the volume up on what you're saying. Shout it, and you will be heard.
A very good way of doing that is by shouting at someone who you think is infringing your identity. Anger, in other words, confirms identity. It confirms who you are or want to be seen as. But how does this affect people whose identity is not yet formed? Young people are growing up in a world that has never been without the chance to publicly broadcast who you would like to be. My daughter Dolly, now 20, has been using social media since her early teens.
It seems to me that when you're 14, there's deep, deep pressure to say, I am this, to make yourself something, something significant.
Completely, yeah. I think especially because, I mean, obviously identity is elusive in general, but when you're adolescent, identity is like, yeah, it's still forming itself. You know, you haven't figured it out yet. But I think social media is so, or just, I don't know, this generation, what I've noticed is we're so desperate to put ourselves into a box in terms of like sexuality, gender, race, class. And I think it's because it feels nice to have a kind of solidified, solid identity when you actually don't. Like attaching yourself to a movement is an easy way to kind of, I don't know, partly like to run away from that self-hatred because you think like, oh, if I attach myself to this whatever social movement, like I'm not a bad person. And I think that can maybe help to combat feelings that you are a bad person.
When she was younger, Dolly found herself in a dark place, much exacerbated by social media. This has been a private family matter up till this moment, but Dolly now feels that speaking about it publicly might help others.
In 2017, when I was 15, I was very, very sick for about 3 years with anorexia. I think there was a multitude of things that culminated in it happening. But I think once I was in it, I think social media made it much, much more difficult for me to recover. And I mean, anorexia and eating disorder in general are very competitive illnesses. Once I had sort of found this community, this recovery community of people, you know, on Instagram who also had eating disorders, that identity of the anorexic was a really easy identity for me to latch onto.
I remember that happening, and I was really pained by it. I could tell it was causing you pain. The struggle for identity is so enormous that it is much more attractive to take an identity that would seem negative to most people than no identity.
Yeah, it was a very appealing identity for me to latch onto because I really didn't like who I was, and like, I think that's quite common amongst, you know, teenagers.
So in terms of, you know, people getting ill, some of that will be about, you know, abuse towards people. But what you're talking about, what we've been talking about, is something more subtle and in a way insidious than that, which is the possibility that social media exploits the fact that a lot of people hate themselves.
Yeah, and that's definitely what scares me about it, I think.
I think Dolly would have been better off without it.
Dolly would definitely have been better off without it, yeah. Yeah, she'd have been better off without social media, and there's no getting away from that. What social media always is, when it's bad, is a signal booster of the bad thing. It does make me think that what you need all the time is a very, very high awareness of what these platforms can do and how they have all sorts of subtleties going on in what they do to the brain. So I just think that you need to be careful. I need to be careful.
The England bowler Ollie Robinson has been suspended from international cricket for a series of racist and sexist tweets he posted as a teenager.
The way social media simplifies identity and broadcasts anger might be linked, I think, to the way it now also metes out a new, and for some far too simplistic, form of justice.
On the biggest day of my career so far, I'm embarrassed by the racist and sexist tweets that I posted over 8 years ago, which have today become public. I want to make it clear that I'm not racist and I'm not sexist. I deeply regret my actions and I'm ashamed of making such remarks.
The justice known as cancel culture.
Anyone who said something racist or homophobic or done something or a sexual transgression in their lives, and, you know, we've seen that. And what happens is, in ways that perhaps wouldn't have happened so quickly before, and often without any form of, you know, legal actual exploration of whether this person has done this thing, then unquestionably that person, they lose their job and they lose their status in society. They are essentially ostracized, and that happens.
Some people think that cancel culture doesn't exist, or at least should be renamed the more positive sounding consequence or call out or accountability culture. For them, what's happening is an exciting new form of mass democracy, in which wrongdoing can be held to account very quickly by large groups who previously had no voice. But to assume this is to ignore the madness of crowds.
I don't think it's something that is good. It, you know, allows us to indulge the desire to savage somebody, but never with the possibility of forgiveness, because we have no stake in this. It's nothing to us. It's just like a spectator sport. It's performative. An actual conversation in which accountability was being demanded would be a conversation. But the form that this takes online, it's never a conversation. And the idea is not to garner a response from them. It's to intimidate them out of saying or doing whatever it was that brought down this enormous backlash ever again.
I just see that people often feel like they don't matter, you know, and they are desperately trying to matter. So many people have felt forgotten. And I think social media, in many ways, is the revenge of the forgotten. You know, this is the place where the formerly bullied feel now justified to bully.
Well, if you agree, then come hating with me.
Feel free to sing along. And it goes like...
Yesterday, I was trending on Twitter. England have just beaten Germany. And I was trending because of the song and Three Lions. But one of the things about any kind of viral trending on Twitter, that there will always be some pushback. In my case, it tends to really centre around the fact that in the 90s, on a program called Fantasy Football League, a comedy show about football, I performed a number of sketches in blackface, impersonating the Nottingham Forest striker Jason Lee. And I've apologised for that in various different contexts, and I'm very happy to keep apologising for it, in fact, because it was wrong and it was racist. But it's interesting how much apologies don't function in a straightforward way on social media. When people are angry, that they don't really want an apology. They want to stay angry. If we are to evolve as a society, then past mistakes do need to be scrutinised. But I worry that we are creating a world that's not interested in old-fashioned ideas like mercy or redemption.
And welcome to the stage, Athena Kublayus!
How are we, 21 Soho? We good?
Then again, we are all learning here, all working it out as we go along. And my own thinking about this was totally disrupted when I saw this tweet about Ollie Robinson from comedian Athena Kublayus.
What are we going to do about Piers Morgan? How many times are we going to cancel this man? How many times? He's harder to cancel than Amazon Prime.
I thought that went very, very well.
Thank you.
Apart from her tweet, Athena is the person to talk to about this, as she recently wrote and performed a radio show called Athena's Cancel Culture.
So, Athena.
So, David.
Look at that.
Look at
I
that.
mean, what is that, comedy? Sorry, I'm going to wave this at you.
Maybe you don't know your own
To
strength.
make a lot of very important points about the internet using this.
Nothing is going to get you cancelled more than waving a stick at a black woman.
That's true,
I'm
I
telling you
apologise.
right
Yeah, I won't do
now.
that again.
Stop silencing the black woman!
Yeah, no, you're quite right. I put it back. It's staying there.
I'm interested in the possibility that the way that we live now, with all the stuff about what I would call call-out culture and the monitoring of constantly of like things you've done in the past and historic tweets or whatever else it might be, doesn't allow for a redemptive narrative and forgiveness and mercy and for people to grow and whatever. But then you said, yeah, but if we just kind of say it's fine, then we're implying that people of 18 can be racist.
If someone does something when they're 18 and it's racist, they need to face a consequence. And if that's a retrospective consequence, I think that's fair, because we can't see racism or any kind of bigotry as a rite of passage, because we're not born bigoted, we're not born racist, we are affected by society, and then we do these things, and then we have to unlearn them. What I would say, and this is the most important thing, is that when these individuals do these things, when they've done them, other people have read them at that time and not said anything about them. They probably liked them, retweeted them, whatever. And when we talk about the individual and not the fact that they existed in a world where that was okay anyway, we are not really addressing the issue, which is that society is just a bit crappy and we are still in a place where we need to evolve.
Yeah, I agree with everything
Yeah.
you're saying. All I think is it's this notion that if we cancel that individual and now that individual in a kind of whack-a-mole way, then we'll create a better world. But these are structures we're talking about here. These are, universal, big structures that are unjust. And the idea that individuals being told off, essentially, is not going to change anything.
Yeah, I struggle with the volume that is given to looking at individuals and what they do or say, when on a day-to-day basis, those individuals don't make my life any easier or better. What would make my life better in terms of, fixing racism or misogyny are things changing closer to home.
While social media may be the main vehicle of cancel culture, it isn't perhaps the best forum for talking about the complexities it throws up.
I think Twitter gets angry when things get complex.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about nuance, there is a huge part of Twitter that's just like, no nuance, I kill now, Hulk. And that's the complete opposite of all other progressions in human communication, that it's become less nuanced, not more.
You should be able to say, this was a flawed, messy, screwed up person, and they contributed something enormously positive to this society or to mankind. Those two things go together, and in fact, the most interesting people are flawed.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
I mean, And the
And also-
most kind of creative and productive people are flawed.
For me, the fans of consequence culture are generally keen to simplify these complexities, which is just like, no, these people have done wrong, and here is our mechanism for meting out the consequences, and it's completely just. And they have a point, but I think what they're forgetting is that this mechanism, this technology is very fast, very unthinking, doesn't have any kind of due process. And so therefore, what they are not exploring, the people who believe in the idea of consequence culture, is how do we keep those consequences proportionate? I'm meeting a woman who has been publicly shamed at the hands of an online campaign to end her career. Tattle Life, a relatively new social media platform, has over 200,000 mainly female members. Its reported mission statement is holding social media influencers to account. Beauty influencer and Guardian columnist Sally Hughes is one of their targets.
It's been every day for about 3 years and will never stop. That's been made abundantly clear to me. So essentially, it's a group of about 30 women. They kind of drop in and out, and they spend upwards of 12 hours every single day dissecting and picking apart everything I say, do, everything I wear, everything I talk about, everything I have said on social media, my family, my marriage, my work. They're just obsessed with talking about how much they hate me.
Like, how do you feel you're dealing with this now?
There's just been a change in my character, and I don't think I can ever reverse it. I would consider myself now a hyper-vigilant person. I keep my head down when I walk down the street.
I read some long piece attacking you because I thought I should have to do that. I didn't want to, but I had to.
See, I'm so embarrassed, you
No,
telling me
I know,
that.
but
I
I
feel
had
so
to, but,
humiliated, but that's the nature of it.
Shame is, and being shamed is almost the most powerful thing, negatively, that can happen to a person.
Shame is huge. It's been a huge part of it for me. When people are being horrible, you feel ashamed that you're being kicked around like this. They sort of hide behind this idea that they're wielding their sort of mighty sword of truth and uncovering corruption or whatever it is.
Of course, that energy, though, that you're talking about on a much wider scale is used as the mainstay for cancel culture. They have the same tribal
Yeah, I
energy
agree.
of, you know, this person deserves it.
I agree with you, and I think almost invariably there is a component of that. There is this, you know, slight kind of troll boner thing that they get where it's like, I feel in control, I can get someone cancelled, I can delete a person's life. Somebody I dislike, somebody maybe I'm jealous of, somebody I think is a bad person. There's something quite rotten about that. And the other thing I loathe about it is that it doesn't allow for any progress in human beings. It doesn't allow for any flaws or any progression. It says, how I feel today about this person is how it must always be.
Having met people who have suffered at the hands of social media, my sense is that much of the outrage directed towards them is to do with them having achieved some kind of voice that is louder than their detractors.
There is a sense I got too big for my boots, I got too successful. I've been told this a lot, that, that I should know my place.
At heart, that's my concern. That's my concern, that the rage that social media can create, sometimes that rage is important and it creates social change, and sometimes we're dressing it up. And it is just rage at people who are doing better than the person who's raging.
I think people are jealous of the drive that I have for life. And I think there's some people that sit there and they watch and they think, why can't I do that? I'm no different to him.
Social media has kind of spread our notion of entitlement. It sniffs out new types of entitlement. So it seems that even though Smithy is an ex-builder and a working-class bloke, it seems as if that just by being very successful at social media, he's become entitled, and therefore people are justified in being angry at him. It's almost as if that means for some people he deserves all he gets. I've been swimming around on social media with all its anger and rage for the past 10 years, something that can't be good for the psyche. I've been asking what it's doing to us, but what's it been doing to me?
I definitely am addicted. I definitely know that I wake up in the morning and I sort of reach over for my phone and I'm looking for emails, but then I'm looking through Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And I think addiction isn't a good thing to begin with, but addiction that puts you at risk of, you know, extreme hatred as part of the addiction is a weird thing to, you know, feel that you are addicted to. So I think I might have to think about trying to come off for a bit.
I've come to see Dr. Emma Short, a psychologist who specialises in online behaviour.
Hello, it's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Come in.
I am thinking of coming off social media for a bit. I can feel a bit of anxiety about thinking about that.
I think if social media use is causing any anxiety, you know, around is this harming me in any way? Am I too dependent on it? It's quite a good idea to take a bit of a break and just reflect on the good things about being on social media versus the bad things.
If I'm going to understand what social media is doing to me, I'm going to have to quit, at least for a couple of weeks. But first, Emma is going to give me a general well-being test.
Okay, have you recently been able to concentrate on whatever you were doing? I think social media has definitely affected my concentration.
Which she can repeat in a fortnight's time to see if giving up has any effect on me.
For a doc I'm doing about the craziness of life on social media and what it does to all our heads, I'm coming off it for a couple of weeks to see just how cold my inner turkey goes. Others will manage this account meanwhile. Wish me luck, or don't, and see you in a bit. But I'm not allowed to look at the responses to it, am I? Once I post this, I can't look at the responses to it. Okay, here we go, I'm posting it. It's gone. And now, Lawrence, the director of this documentary, take this and change the passwords on it. Right, don't tell me.
Okay.
I'm already anxious. Okay, so that's filming.
Okay. Have you got any sense of how much you would have, say, in a 2-hour period tonight, how much you would normally have looked at it then?
Probably 2 or 3 times. But even though you're enjoying Twitter, there's a kind of Russian roulette element to Twitter, always, certainly if you're a public figure, which is that you might say something that gets you, you know, heavily taken down and attacked and whatever. You might accidentally say something. You might say something on somewhere else that gets dragged into Twitter. So the question is not being on it peace of mind inducing?
One thing that very much doesn't give me peace of mind is my fear that all this rage, anger and public shaming is stopping people from saying what they really think, particularly if it's anything different or crazy or out of the box. Which for a comedian can be especially problematic.
They're really fun names, the candidates for Labour leader. There's Rebecca Long-Bailey, who sounds like a delicious cocktail. Then there's Sir Keir Starmer, who sounds like something a Nazi officer would shout in a film. Keir Starmer! I mean, Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't call them a Nazi officer. He'd call them a passionate campaigner with legitimate concerns about Israel.
It was for this joke that fellow comedian Phil Wang attracted the wrath of social media.
Did you feel threatened?
I was on tour at the time, and someone tweeted me saying, we have your tour dates, we know where you're going to be, you better look out, better keep your eyes over your shoulder, you better look out, better be careful.
That is incredibly disturbing that someone can say something, however they might not enact it, that essentially means, right, you know, I might kill you.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the damage is, a part of the damage is already done just with the threat. You don't have to follow up with it. You've damaged someone's mental well-being by threatening them with violence, even if you never carry it out, right?
I do worry, in a culture where a comedian makes a joke on a topic of a comedy show and his life is threatened, that might make you think twice before you make the next joke like that.
So the jokes we've lost, the comedy we've lost, is unquantifiable, because we never saw it in the first place. Mob rule is significant, is real. And if someone is prevented from doing something or loses their job because of an online mob, that that is an encroachment on their free speech, because now their livelihood is threatened. Their family is threatened. Just because it isn't sanctioned by the state doesn't mean it isn't a very real repercussion for expressing an honest opinion. So in effective terms, you have lost an element of free speech.
I can't say anything that's going to fuck me up. Because, like, that white box is there all the time to destroy us, isn't it? Like, we're all one tweet away from absolute cancellation and destruction and whatever.
Millions of people have in their phone a resignation app. They've got a little blue resignation app. Anytime you've had enough of your job, just get on this app.
Yeah.
Since I started making this film, I've learnt what a big part anger plays in how social media operates. But my time away from it has also taught me how much of a distraction it is from everything else in your life.
What a gear. One thing I don't think I'll be saying on my deathbed is, oh, I wish I'd done a few more tweets. A friend of mine, I'm not going to say who, once said that if it were not for wanking, he would have built empires, because he'd spent so much time wanking. And I know what he means, but I now think that about Twitter.
It's now the end of my self-enforced cancellation from social media.
So I'm off to see Emma Short again. I've been off it for 2 weeks, and now I'm going back for another test to see if 2 weeks off has made me a much, much better person. Has it made me a better person? I think it has made me feel slightly at peace with myself. It's a bit like a holiday.
Hi.
How you doing?
Come in. I'm good.
There is no question that it's had immediate, obvious psychological benefits, and there's sort of less anxiety. If you've got 700,000 followers or whatever, it's like being on stage all the time. And so not having that definitely creates a sense of greater peace.
The whole idea of regulating time or thinking about our relationship with online platforms may help us all regulate our levels of hate and outrage when we're on it.
Shall we do the test?
OK. So thinking about the time that you have been off social media.
Yeah. Being able to concentrate on whatever you're doing, I would say that's better than usual. Lost much sleep over worry, not at all. But I do think I've slept a bit better over the past 2 weeks. Been able to enjoy your normal day-to-day activities. I'm going to say more so than usual.
OK.
Been feeling reasonably happy, all things considered. At this moment, I would say more so than usual.
Well, that's tremendous. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't obviously attribute this to this single change in behaviour.
Yeah.
But if you look at the one from last time, literally, if you're on
Oh,
that side,
yes.
that indicates some distress.
Yes.
And you have got none on that side of it.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? That's a total leftward shift, from my
Yes.
point of view, into well-being
Yes.
and, you know, zenness.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Despite all the psychological benefits of being off it, I am going back on social media, partly because of my job as a performer.
I just did that for the comedy.
But also because I am frightened of being excluded from the conversation.
I'm back on it, and I'm going to post this. Hello, I'm back. After a few days of struggle, I got over the cold turkey and realised that being off social media grants you a sense of more time, key at my time of life, and more actual peace of mind, which of course is why here I am, re-addicting myself to it. I've sent that. 23 people like that tweet. 2 people have replied to it. Welcome back, welcome back. So it's quite nice. Despite all this stuff about the age of rage and the hate industry, the first responses have been very nice.
Of course, it didn't take long for the angry haters to return. But I guess that's the yin and yang, the good and bad of social media. And I think at this point in history, we don't know how that equation is going to work out.
I think we'll look back at this era and go, God, so Twitter ran for social media ran for 10 years, 15 years with no rules, no regulation. People must have gone crazy. It must have been politically a really weird time. We must have seen changes in society that baffled older people, just going, things don't usually change like this so quickly and so violently. And we'll go, yeah, you would never invent something like that from scratch again, knowing how this experiment has worked out so far.
You know, what social media is in many ways, like, we are living in an open plan mansion with everybody that we hate, you know, and now that we can know what our neighbors are thinking and feeling, and we're, as a country, as a world, you know, we're trying to grapple with that.
It's exciting to live in a time where history is really happening and changing. And I would say there is no question that David Bowie was right. Social media has changed everything. And what that means is, for good or bad, we are living in the now of a historical change. That's fucking great. It's not good, that's fucking great. We talked a lot in this documentary about anger and rage, but obviously the thing about anger and rage is it's people being loud, it's people being heard, it's people shouting. And that means that there are a lot of people not being heard, because we know there are a lot of people on social media and not all of them are shouting. It means that there are a lot of quiet people on social media and you don't hear from them a lot. But at the moment, today, my dad, who I talk about quite a lot on social media, who has dementia, he was rushed to hospital last night. And I put this on social media. So Ivor Baddiel and I got the doom call from a doctor yesterday and rushed to hospital to be with my dad. We stayed for a number of hours, after which it seemed as if the old bugger may be about to swerve death one more time. My father is nothing if not tough as old boots. And you know what? I don't know at this very moment if my dad is going to make it. And it's weird. Why did I put that on social media? I think I put that on social media partly because I think by saying that, I will make it happen, that he will swerve death. And the other reason is that I know that I will hear from the quiet people.
Details of organisations offering information and support are available at the BBC Action Line website.